أهلا بكم مشاهدينا الكرام إلى هذه الحلقة الجديدة من برنامج استوديو واشنطن. حدث ينتظره العالم ويتابعه بشغف كل 4 سنوات يبدأ بعد أقل من الأسبوع من الآن. الانتخابات الأمريكية للرئاسة والكونغرس وتأثيراتها على السياسة الداخلية والخارجية للولايات المتحدة والشرق الأوسط ودول أخرى. نتابعها في حلقة اليوم مع ضيفنا في استوديو واشنطن السيد مايك فان ميتر، مرشح الحزب الجمهوري عن ولاية فيرجينيا الأمريكية. Mr. Mike, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Mr. Mike, if we start about the latest for what mentioned on Washington Post described the current presidential race as the most United States turbulent in the country and also or the history. Why are they describe the election like this?
Well, there's for a lot of reasons. Number one, this is the most critical election in my lifetime. There's no question about that in modern times. And I think that there's a lot of division, frankly, because of the media. No offense to you being in the media, but there's a lot of division. There's a lot of misinformation that's out there. We know now from Elon Musk, we know from all the different newspapers, the way that Twitter handled the last election, that there was a lot of information that was kept back and it was politically driven. And people realize that now. And people realize that to a great extent, there was information that would have played into Donald Trump's favor in the last election. And in fact, when it came to the banning of the information on the Hunter Biden laptop, that alone, that information alone, had it been out to the public, studies are showing that about 17% of the American voters would have voted for Donald Trump. That would have been enough to win. And consequently, we ended up with 4 years of economic misery, world turmoil, and a host of other problems. And so we have, as I'm sitting here with you, we have 6 days left to the election, and it's critical that Donald J. Trump win and we sweep the House and the Senate, because the future of the United States is at stake. And you and I were talking earlier about the future of the Middle East, and it is critical that Donald Trump get in office because there's too much tension in the world right now, and Donald Trump is best equipped.
Yeah, we will come to the Middle East and the conflict there, but we will also need to speak about the description of Kamala Harris. How do you react what she said yesterday night about the president or former President Trump, when she said, quote unquote, that he unstable person obsessed with the revenge, consumed with the grievance and out for unchecked power. And also there is a comment was offensive from President Biden on the Trump supporter. How do you react with the whole thing happened yesterday, especially?
Well, unbelievable. I mean, this was truly unbelievable. And we'll start with the comments that Kamala Harris made. Okay, her only course right now is to attack Donald Trump, because she's not talking about policies, which is what the American people care about. That's what you care about. You live in the United States now, the economy, what's going on in the Middle East, and what's going on with our children, our schools, and so on and so forth, our military. That's what people care about. But what is she doing? She's talking about Donald Trump. She's talking about him being unstable and being someone that will not follow court orders. You know, we had him for 4 years. If he wanted to be a dictator, he could have been a dictator. He wasn't. He followed every legal procedure that came out. He followed the dictates of the Supreme Court, which the Biden administration did not. They ignored the Supreme Court 3 times when it came to handing out money. So he never demonstrated that. And as far as being unstable, he never took any action that was unstable. In fact, there was a lot of stability in the United States. If you think about it, it was a very, very peaceful time. Did not enter into any new wars. Now, when it came to the statements, they're talking about 50 right now. As we look at the election, it's pretty split. It's almost 50-50%. 50% here, 50% on the Democrat side. And they're insulting 50%.
Yeah. If that make this election tough than others?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know that we've had an election that has been this divisive. But really what they are saying is we look down upon and we do not care. And in fact, we despise half of the nation. That's not how you win voters over. That is absolutely not how you win voters over. And it's not going to be a winning strategy. But it's showing desperation on the behalf of Kamala Harris. She's very, very worried. And I'll tell you something, I don't believe the polls. I'm not believing that this race is as close as it is. I'm not believing that. That's the media reporting this. And there's, you know, the trust in the media is low. In fact, it's as low as the where Congress's ratings have been, which has been notoriously low. And that's going to be one of the issues. And my advice to the media moving forward is that we start giving more facts and less politically driven opinion, because people do not trust the media anymore. And that's why we're going to online podcasts. Look at the success of the Joe Rogan podcast that we just had. Very unbiased, just factual. Look at all other podcasts. Look at online media.
Do you mean that the mainstream media is like declaring a war against Mr. Trump?
There's no question about that. Absolutely no question about it. The proof is there. But the American people recognize that, and that's why they're rejecting the mainstream media and going to alternative media, online forums, podcast, YouTube. Look at the explosion of YouTubers and podcasters. In fact, I do a couple of podcasts myself, and that's where people are starting to get young people get their information off of TikTok and off of Instagram and those modalities. The newspapers. Look at the Washington Post and the controversy they had just this week. People don't trust them anymore.
It's 250,000. They are unsubscribed to the
unsubscribed. Right. And those are liberal voters, by the way. That by and large, the Washington Post is being read by very left-wing Democrats, and they dropped out 250,000. I want to say it was about an eighth or a sixth of their total readership. That's a big deal. Very big deal.
What is the main issue that's facing the country right now?
The border, absolutely, the border.
Only the
border. Because, that's not the only thing. It's the main thing that people, on day one, we need to get a handle on this border. And the reason for that is there's about 100 other issues that fall off of the border. The economy, inflation, our national security. We have intelligence officers and spies, which nobody talks about, pouring over the border. Remember, I'm a retired FBI agent. I know what's coming across the border. Drugs, gangs, mentally ill criminals. Look at all of the problems that we've had. Influencing our election. There's so many problems, and that's just a few. And so the number one issue for our national security, remember, the number one priority of our government and any government on planet Earth is the safety and security of their people. And with that border being wide open, we are not guaranteeing the security. We have terrorists that have come across the border, and that's the number one responsibility of the government. So that's the first issue that needs to be brought under control. And then drilling and becoming energy independent. Why? Not only does it affect our economy, because the doubling of the gasoline prices, which is what we've had, with that, it has literally touched every single thing that you touch and do has gone up in price. Everything has gone up in price because of the energy costs. But it's also a national security issue, because the Biden administration depleted the national strategic reserves, which are designed, and the purpose of the national strategic reserves are for our military purposes. Trump, when he was in office, brought that up. Biden depleted it because he wanted to artificially lower gas prices. Didn't even do a good job with that. But now that's fuel for our military. And if we have a global conflict, we're going to be at a disadvantage there. National security.
How is the difference between the Republican and the Democrats if we come out on the problems like border security, like national security, like prices, like economy? How the difference between both parties?
Well, you just have to look. This is the only election that I'm aware of in U.S. history, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but not just my lifetime, but U.S. history, where we have both candidates were in office. One was vice president under administration, and the other one was president. So this isn't even just rhetoric. It's not just listening to what they're saying, because we can listen to what they're saying, but then we look at what they've done. There's no question. There is no question that America was more prosperous under Donald J. Trump. Absolutely no question about that. There's no question that we are less secure, and inflation is out of control because of all the printing of the money that they did, and we're less safe. And then look at the open borders. You know, if Kamala Harris wanted to fix these things, She just had 4 years to fix these things. She didn't. There is nothing in her past that says that she's going to do what she's saying, what she's going to do. You know, when you look at people, you know, and even in law enforcement, which is my background, one of the things I do in order to predict your future behavior is I look at your past. What did you do in the past? And then that will be a good indicator as to what you're going to do in the future.
It's the same question maybe from the Democrats to Mr. Trump.
Right.
What he did during the last 4 years when he was in the office.
Sure, and we were living pretty well. The economy was down, no new wars. We had a secure border. In fact, the border was, I think they were the lowest numbers that we've ever seen in U.S. history, at least as long as they've been recording border crossings. And we didn't have these insane policies that we're looking at now. I mean, looking at women and men and women's sports, and you know, the social issues, all these things. You know, people, this wokeism just being rammed down everyone's throat that no one really wants, if you think about it. And it's being forced upon us. And we were thriving under Donald Trump. And so you're exactly right. The left will say he's going to be a dictator. What evidence do you have that he's going to be a dictator?
Dare I speak about the 2025 project?
What about it? He's denounced it. He's never read it.
Yeah.
I've never read the Project 2025. By the way, Project 25 is a document that was put together by the Heritage Foundation, which is a think tank. Every political candidate has inputs or people that try to influence them. Every think tank that's out there is trying to influence any administration, any politician. This is very normal, and that's also true of the Democrats. They do the same thing. But Donald Trump has said that he's not read the document. He has said that he doesn't care what it says. He has his own. Donald Trump doesn't need a think tank to come in and influence what he wants to do. The Democrat, that's a red herring argument because the Democrats keep referring to Project 2025, and there's no evidence that he's influenced by it. These are things that the Democrats are grappling onto because they are desperate, because they know that Kamala Harris is an awful candidate. Awful candidate. But this is what happens when you just put somebody into this position without going through the primary process. Look, I'm running for office myself, okay? And I can tell you, if you're running for office, the primaries are very, very difficult. You're running against all the other candidates in your party. It's a very grueling process. I got to tell you, running for an office is not for most people to do. But there's an upside to it. And the upside is you get to vet the candidate. You get to test them. You get to test them in debates. You get to see how they respond to questions like this. She did not go through that process. And that's what happens. I will remind everyone that when she ran for president in the Democratic primaries, she never got even 1% of the Democrat votes. Forget about the general population. The Democrat votes. She never made it to Iowa, and she dropped out. And then later, she's appointed as vice president, and then that propelled her into the position that she's in. No American actually voted for her to be the nominee of the Democrat Party. And we are seeing right now the fruits of that. And the Democrats are scared because they're seeing that she's she is not equipped for this office. She is not up to the task, and she is not able to handle. I mean, I would ask you and all of your viewers, when it comes to the world issues, this instability in the world right now, who would you trust to handle this? Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Republicans or the Democrats? They have given us chaos, and he gave us stability, and that's undisputed. Undisputed.
How the Republican will get rid of the inflation, cost of living, and when the other social problems be addressed by the Republican? Any of the accusation comes from the Democrats. President Trump tried to distance himself about this. How you will get rid of all this problem if you are elected as a party?
Well, number one, with inflation, it starts with the energy independence that we were talking about. We have to drill. We have enough fuel here in the United States to make us completely independent from the rest of the world. It's insane that we don't do that. Donald Trump wants to do that. Remember, I was talking about how the gas prices have driven everything that you touch, and in some cases doubled the prices of goods and services. So drilling and energy independence will bring that back down. Now, but our friends on the left, the Democrats, will say, well, what about green energy? We want that. Well, number one, we're not prepared to do that. You know, the way that we Republicans, Donald Trump and myself, look at this is we have nothing against electrical power. We have nothing against it, but it has to be driven by the markets, and you have to have the infrastructure. We could if I could wave my magic wand right now and just say everybody's driving an electrical vehicle, you're not going to be going anywhere because we don't have the grid, we don't have the system, we don't have the infrastructure to handle that. Okay? And the way that you move to green energy is encouraging people to do that and then have the infrastructure and make it such that it makes your life better. It does not make your life better, by the way. It also, with the green energy, we are completely dependent upon China, who is our #1 adversary right now in America. We are completely dependent upon them for the making of the vehicles, the chips, so on and so forth. So that's a problem. So we need to be prepared, and Donald Trump would prepare the people to go in that particular direction. So and also when it comes to the environmental issues, which would be a social issue that you're talking about, we need to really explore the environmental impact of electrical vehicles because they are run by batteries. What do you do with batteries when they when they die? How do you dispose of them? Also, what do you do with environmental concerns? We saw in Chicago last year when they had a deep freeze, they couldn't even charge the vehicles that were there. We need to look at our highway systems, because if you think of the weight of electric vehicles, these semi-trailers that look at how heavy they would be.
All of this is a key factor in the election. Also, this election, especially with what happened in the Middle East for a year now, until now, this is also take the maybe or grab the interest of the people or voters who want to stop the war. How the Republican will stop the war in the Middle East?
Well, when it comes to that, that's a very, very touchy situation, and I'm going to point out that that's actually not our war. Okay, and I know many of your viewers, in the Middle East, if you're in the Middle East, this is a top priority for you. It's actually not a top priority for the United States, if you think about it. Not right now. We actually have other priorities that we are looking at. Israel was attacked. They were attacked, and as a sovereign nation, they have a right to respond to those attacks. Now, when it comes to how they respond to those attacks, there's a great debate as to how that's going to be done. But many of your viewers may realize that because Joe Biden has demonized the Israelis and he has alienated them, there's not much of a relationship between Benjamin Netanyahu and Biden. You're probably aware of that. Trump, on the other hand, has a very strong relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu and will work with him. Trump was just on the Joe Rogan show, and if your viewers haven't watched that interview, you need to. It's 3 hours. It's a pretty long interview, but he talked about that. And what he said was, for national security reasons, he's not going to disclose exactly what he's going to do to end that conflict, but he has said that he's going to end that conflict, not only that one, but also Ukraine, and he's going to do that.
Biden poured a lot of money, even Ukraine or Israel, billions and billions.
He had to, because it was these were funds, these were arms that were already approved by Congress to do that. He had no choice to do that. For your viewers, if you're not familiar with the U.S. government and how it operates, the president. Remember, the president is not a dictator in the United States, and Israel is an ally of the United. They are our key ally in the Middle East, and much of the funding and many of the arms and aircraft and tanks and weapons and things like that have been approved. And these are budgets that are done from year to year, and they project into the future. And so these are items that had to be given to Israel because they were voted in by Congress, and the president cannot override that. Biden's actually tried to stop some of the shipments, but he can't. Remember, we have 3 branches of government, and they're co-equal in that regard. And so
the check and balances.
The checks and balances.
But
people don't always understand that.
Yeah, but if we speak to our viewer in the Middle East or Arab speakers around the world, they are focusing on how to end this war and put into consideration the Palestinian rights. So how you will balance between the both?
Well, it's a very difficult thing to balance, but I will say that we in the United States have one problem, and that is that there are American hostages being held right now, correct? Correct.
Yeah.
Release them. Release them, and then we have a talk. Oh, no. I'm not going to say that that's... Again, this is a conflict between Israel and what's going on in Gaza. But when people say the United States and these are usually people from the Middle East who are saying the United States needs to stop funding Israel, the United States needs to stop giving arms to Israel. You got to remember that that's a very myopic, that's a very focused view of what's going on there. We have other interests in the United States that Israel is a part of. For example, to the north, Iran, right? Who do you think the United States deems is the bigger threat? Iran.
Yeah.
And who's checking Iran in the Middle East? Or Israel is. So when people say you need to not arm Israel, that would be crazy as far as the United States is concerned, because of that threat to the north.
If the President Trump will be in the office, do you think there will have major war there in the Middle East because of Iran?
No, I actually think that no, absolutely not, because of the strength that is projected. Okay, and he did that. He did that with North Korea when he was in office. He did that with Putin. And I am convinced, and Donald Trump is convinced, that if he had been in office, Putin would have never invaded the Ukraine. I also believe that October 7th would have never happened because of the strength that is projected. It is weakness that breeds violence. And when people think that they can get away with these things, they're going to do that. Trump is a businessman. And he really wields the economic part of negotiations very well. For example, he told Mexico, you build these auto plants down there, we're going to put a tariff, 200%, even up to a 200% tariff. You won't be able to sell one vehicle. So they stopped that. He did the same thing. He's done it with China. He did it with Putin economically, shutting them down. He's very good. And Kamala is not, she doesn't have the skill sets to deal with that.
As you mentioned, Trump will have this skill sets to speak with the leaders around the world. How he will stop the Ukrainian crisis, as he mentioned, how he will stop the crisis in the Middle East.
Well, how he'll do, let me just start with Russia. It will be economically. Because economically, the Biden administration has allowed, when we shut down our drilling in our pipeline, he allowed Russia to open it back up. One of the first things that Donald Trump will do and Congress will do is shut that back down. We can financially cripple Russia. We can financially cripple Iran because he was doing that when he was in office.
There is no room for negotiation to speak diplomacy?
How do you mean?
I mean diplomacy. Are you speaking about continued sanctions, or you will continue or on the other way of the diplomatic way?
No, we'd shut them down economically. You stop this war in Ukraine, because we're talking Ukraine right now, or we will financially bring you to your knees. And he did that. And Putin knew that he was going to do that. He did the same thing with Kim Jong-un, and he does it with the Chinese. That's how we have that ability. And the same thing with Iran.
What is the imagination within the Republican Party for the future relationship with Russia and China and North Korea?
Well, when it comes to Russia, we want to have relationships with them, but they need to stop. Russia is a war machine. They are a war machine, but economically, they are not the economic power that we are. They're not the economic power that they project. Neither is China, by the way, and North Korea certainly isn't. And the way that you do these things, we don't want conquest. We aren't going into Russia looking for land. We want them to stop aggression around the world, and we want them to stop threatening us and their neighbors. Like when you look at Kim Jong-un, we had peace. Kim Jong-un stopped because he respected Donald Trump, and he knew that he was dealing with another world leader that knew what he was doing and actually could wield that economic that hammer, if you want, to get them to stop. There's no bullets flying. There's no people being killed. It is done. Okay, you shoot missiles into Japan, or if we're talking about, or into the China Sea, which is what Kim Jong was doing, then we will just destroy you economically. We're not going to shoot. We're not going to invade. We're not going to do anything else. And they listened. The same thing with Putin. And the same thing will happen with Iran. Because these are unstable governments. These are not economic powers. And the fact is that the Biden administration, and Obama even before them, how many billions of dollars did we give to Iran? That's insane. Why would we do that? A country that has vowed to wipe us and Israel off of the face of the earth, They've said that. And we give them billions of dollars. They're also the #1 funder of terrorism. Look at all the American soldiers over 20 years that were injured or killed because of weapons provided by Iran. And we're giving them money? That's insane.
If we speak about the money, figures, numbers, the last couple days were the BRICS meeting or summit there in Kazan in Russia. How you will deal with this situation? Especially I speak about this situation with many Republicans who said that this is because of failing of the U.S. policy. That's why there is a BRICS. There is another type of cooperation between the other countries who are already under the sanction or under dispute with the United States, under the Biden administration.
Well, it's pure and simple. We have to get rid of the Biden administration, and by proxy, we have to get rid of Harris. These people are not capable of dealing with this. Did we have any issues with Russia when Trump was in office? Did we? No. No, we didn't have any problems.
Yeah.
Have we had problems since they've been in office?
No.
With Biden?
No, it's
of course we have. There you go. What it goes back to what I was telling you earlier. We had 4 years under Trump. We've had 4 years under the Biden administration. And she has told us she was there for every important decision. She was the last person in the room. She told us that. Good. We've seen that. And we saw Trump. She has to go. And my opponent in the 11th district rubber stamped and followed every single policy of the Biden administration. He needs to go. If you want world peace, if you want prosperity, if you want a better economy, there is no question that you should be voting for Trump and every other Republican down the ticket. Now, the reason why, because I was telling you that we have 3 branches of government. The first thing the Democrats are going to do when they get into office is lawsuits, impeach, just like they did last time. They are going to try to sabotage everything he does from day one. So it is important that Donald Trump get in office and then the Republicans keep the Senate and the House to ensure that that does not happen. Okay?
I have only 90 seconds. What is the first decision would take if you are elected, if Mr. President elected, once we get done of the election?
Shut down the border. Shut down the border and get rid of the criminals and the terrorists that have come here. And Trump has said so, that from day one, that we're going to start on the biggest operation to get rid of the violent criminals, terrorists, and spies that have come into this country.
For the foreign policy?
Yeah.
What is the foreign policy? What is the first decision?
Oh, on the first thing he's going to do is work with Ukraine and Israel and work on stopping both of those wars. And I trust that he will do that. He's vowed to do that. Check out the Joe Rogan interview. He talks about that in detail.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us in Studio Washington.